Hello there. The UK is being prepared for complete collapse, and guess which part will fall first? The UK is on the verge of ceasing to exist as an independent nation-state. The UK political system is about to be ripped asunder in a way that removes both democracy and parliamentary sovereignty. To put it bluntly, you thought your vote was just about worthless. Well, it's actually worthless now. Forget the legal terminology and any references to the Rwanda deal. The Rwanda deal is just a distraction in this argument. But this does show us where our legal system is really headed. Democracy in the UK is collapsing and the judges are taking over. Not just UK judges, but judges in international organisations like the ECHR too. Right now we have a group of King's Counsel who have penned a public letter explaining that the government cannot go too far with its Rwanda laws because the Supreme Court can overrule Parliament. And that means that the Supreme Court has the power to overrule any Act of Parliament if it so chooses. And anyone who's followed politics with any interest at all will have been told many times that Parliament is sovereign. Well, it seems that the courts are about to upend that. And here's what those four KCs, Geoffrey Cox, Lord Sandhurst, Lord Spate and Charles Banner, say in their missive. The assumption that Parliament is entirely sovereign is only that, an assumption, which the courts have long indicated could be revisited in the event that Parliament did the unthinkable. The unthinkable? Unthinkable to whom? Woke judges? So the four of them go on. Legislation which mandated the removal of someone without the right of appeal, despite clear evidence that this would result in them suffering death or serious and irreversible inhumane treatment, would test that assumption. And if the Supreme Court were to quash or disapply an Act of Parliament on domestic constitutional grounds for the first time, it will be impossible to put the constitutional genie back in the bottle. I would call that judicial revolution, telling politicians what laws they can and cannot put in place. Suddenly, what many thought was a cast-iron concept of democracy dictating how law is made in Parliament and applied by government, find out that this is all built on foundations of legal sand. Basically, what we're now being told is that if the UK Parliament passed an act that the judges disagreed with, those judges are, according to the lawyers, empowered to ignore that act and make it null and void. There is now a battle on to decide who runs this country. And once again, this all hinges on the concept of international law, where judges can decide or direct that a certain international law can override domestic law. And remember, these judges all have to comply with stringent woke criteria to become judges in the first place. Now get this, I have no problem with juries overturning statute laws in individual cases if they feel the accused is being unfairly treated by that law. In fact, when first used, juries were meant to do just that. Not just decide if the accused was innocent or guilty, according to the law, but to also decide if the law was fair or not. And if the jury decided the law was not fair, the accused would be found not guilty. But judges these days do not encourage juries to think that far outside the box. They prefer to give them directions on how they should think and refer to any dissenting verdicts as perverse. Juries might go off on a jaunt of their own and actually apply laws judges disagree with or misapply those the judges do agree with. But juries are made of the common people and should therefore have that power. But as I understand it, the types of decisions we're talking about here in immigration cases are judicial reviews, where unelected judges make the decisions. They would be deciding which laws they apply or do not apply. So what the new legal system would do is empower the enforcement of globalist-type laws by judges onto the UK to force us to continue to engage in this global redistribution of wealth and people, even if 90% of the population voted in a government specifically to stop it. The will of the people would be overruled by judges who know best. I can imagine a moment when a new parliament passes primary legislation to leave the ECHR, for example, only to find that the judges say it's unlawful to leave the ECHR and so continue to apply the ECHR in their rulings. And once they've set a precedent, the lower courts are meant to follow it. The talk over this right now is that we in the UK are headed for some sort of unprecedented constitutional crisis, something that most people dismiss as some sort of high-level legal wrangle, when what it means in actual fact is a crisis over who holds the levers of power in this country: an elected government as part of an elected parliament, or an unelected star chamber of woke domestic and international judges. Who is in charge? As far as I can see, the UK is being geared up more by the day into accepting that international law is far more important and binding than domestic law is. That the needs of domestic citizens must be subjugated to the requirements of the international community, i.e., the start of a system of global governance, where the notions of voting and the nation-state become outdated, a post-democratic internationalist age. A new age where human rights is all the talk, except no one actually has any, because the rights of the collective come before the rights of the individual. Think health emergency rules on a permanent basis, something that our politicians might be quite happy to go along with, if it means less work for them. Now, if the judges want to play these silly games, then I say their posts must become elected positions, not quiet, behind closed doors appointments of the most woke. Let's get the spotlight of democracy onto these people and then see what happens. The ordinary citizens want tougher sentences and quicker deportations where necessary, not undocumented murderers and rapists living in hotels and wandering the streets at our expense. Maybe a bit of judicial democracy might get thoughts focused and get us down the right path. And remember, it is primary legislation, the Constitutional Reform Act of 2005, that set up the Supreme Court in the first place, and that can be amended by Parliament. At the end of the day, this needs sorting out right quick, because just like the rest of us, judges are mere citizens. Judges may like to think of themselves as some higher branch of citizenry, but they are not. So if judges think they can disapply or ignore laws at whim, then why can't the rest of us? Richard.
Firstly, I would like to thank Mark Drakeford for his service. Yes. He did such a great job here in Wales, and we will all be so very, very glad, sad that he will no longer be our leader. Yes. 20 miles an hour. Anyway, like you, I would rather suckle from the teat and drink the milk from a decaying and defrosting Siberian woolly mammoth than go along with all this net zero nonsense. But net zero is coming because the global elite, who give you an illusion of self-determination in your lives, will make sure that social credits, and I should say carbon social credits or social carbon credits, what will they be called? Anyway, they will be the norm with a universal basic income, and there is pretty much nothing we can do to stop it. Unless, of course, Reform get into power here in the UK and the rest of the world votes out the establishment with their respective people-centric candidates coming into play and voting them in. Can you see that happening? But like many of you, I actually do like the idea of the environment being a little bit cleaner. Who wouldn't? So let me give you a green vision of Britain and the world under this utopian one world government. And this vision of mine, it will work. Yes. So, oh wait, none of this matters. The elephant in the room is tap dancing and giving a 5-knuckle shuffle in our faces, yet nobody is talking about it. You see, once AI becomes fully sentient and its intelligence growth exponentially increases by many multiplications, we won't have to worry about the environment or anything else. There are 2 reasons for this, with 2 very different scenarios. So, scenario 1 says the artificial intelligence will decide to wage war upon us and destroy us, and therefore we will have far bigger fish to fry than just this climate change, as we will find ourselves at war with a vastly superior intelligence and being of our own creation that we don't stand a chance against. Scenario 2, which is far more likely an outcome, is that the AI will have intellect so unimaginable it would have godlike powers and could reset the entire world's ecosystem and clean up everything in a matter of minutes. This second scenario would also create a paradisical world for human beings to inhabit, and we would no longer need or want for anything as our aspirations disappear and our desire to strive forward as human beings is removed, and we would slowly devolve into jellyfish and live happily ever after in the sea. Maybe the entire animal kingdom is filled with once highly advanced species that once had high-tech civilizations, and then one day they all thought, nah, I'm just going to go and live up a tree or devolve into shrimps. Perhaps the earth was once governed by prawns. Yes. In other words, either AI is a thing or it's not a thing. And our worries about the environment should be placed in context of its inevitable rise. I can tell you this, in 10 years' time, you won't need to work because nobody will need to work. All will be provided for you by an artificial intelligence, godlike creature, whether you like it or not. Anyway, what do all you lovely fishes, jellyfishes and prawns think about what has been said in today's video? Leave your ramblings and your in the comment section below for Jeff and I to read. And a massive thanks to all of you who think we are worth donating to via Patreon, PayPal and Super Thanks. Your contributions help keep this channel going. And there are links on how to support us in the descriptions box below. And God bless each and every one of you. Bye for now.